grandpa told him about this God of Israel, that about these promises that Jehovah God had made to his family line. For some reason, Joseph got it. He got the idea that God really is actively involved in my family's life. God has a dream for us. God has a plan for us. And because of his conviction that God was with him in his life, he was able to say no. You know, when she said, let's go to bed, he said, no, let's not. And then he got away from her. He didn't, he didn't just keep saying, he found ways to get away from her. And it really shows you the conviction you need to have because God is with you. Not because, and I know we all need support. We've got the Bible now. We've got the Holy Spirit and all those things. I'm just saying that here's a great example of someone who didn't make excuses because he didn't have all the stuff that we have. He just was convinced God was with him, and he lived like God was with him. And that's a challenge for us, right? To live like God is really there. That's living by faith. So, why did Joseph do this? Why did he express this kind of faith? Again, he was convinced God was with him. And I think here's the challenge for it. It's difficult for us to remain faithful when you don't feel like God is faithful to you, isn't it? If you feel like God's not being faithful to you, you're doing the right things, but you don't see the blessings, or you're trying to treat your spouse right, your wife right, but then she just gets meaner for some reason. I don't know how that works sometimes, but that just works that way. The kids, you're trying to discipline your kids, but it seems like the more you discipline, the more rebellious they get, and the more hard-hearted. It seems like you're doing the right things, but God isn't being faithful. Or maybe you pray about something. You pray, and nothing happens. God's not faithful. That's what we feel like. That's what I'm sure Joseph had those feelings, that, man, I'm doing the right things. I'm trying to do right. I'm saying no to this woman who's trying to seduce me every single day. And again, he could have made excuses. God's forsaken me. I'm just going to go ahead and go for it here. Or he could have said, hey, I come from a dysfunctional family, so I've got the right to have a little fun. Because I've got some brothers who hate me, and all of these bad things have happened. He could have done all kinds of things to really justify what he was going to do. Or you could even thought, hey, just this once. Hey, I'll just do it this one time. It'll be okay. Nobody will know. I know she's not going to tell because her husband's going to kill her too. It's just not going to, So, but he has this conviction and he does what's right. And look what happens. Man, God's going to bless this, right? It's going to be awesome that God's going to really raise him up here. Verse 13. Verse 11. One day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. Looks like a little setup here, a little coinky-dink. She caught him by his cloak and said, come to bed with me. So she's asking him, and finally she's got the other servants on other missions. He's there alone with her, and she just snatched him, just going to throw him in bed, just going to take the young man there. She caught him by the cloak and said, come to bed with me. But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. Okay. Crazy, huh? He keeps saying no, and the temptation comes stronger and stronger. Verse 13. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. Look, she said to them, this Hebrew has been brought to brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house. Man, what a scheming woman, right? So she kept his cloak beside her until his master came home. Then she told him the story. That Hebrew slave you brought us has come to make sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house. When his master heard the story his wife told him, saying, this is how your slaves treated me, he burned with anger. And most commentators say he burned with anger because he kind of suspected that she was lying, but he had to save face with everybody. He sort of had to fix the situation. He says he burned with anger, and here's why they think that. Because Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. If you're a slave and your master's wife accuses you of trying to rape her, your head's gone. This is Egypt. They just lop your head off. But they're suspecting that that Potiphar kind of knew the character of his wife here, and so he puts him in the king's prison, which is actually his prison that he's over. So it's kind of weird. But while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. It's like, by this time Joseph's thinking, Lord, please be with somebody else, be with my brothers, be with Potiphar's wife, be with somebody else, because he gets thrown in the pit. He gets sold into slavery. He gets accused of rape. He gets thrown in this other pit in the prison. It's like, Lord, and every time it's like, the Lord was with Joseph. Saying, I don't feel like you're with me, Lord. It's like, this is rough, And so he's thinking, man, please be with somebody else. That's the challenge here. But but you see that with Joseph, he hangs in there, and he does what's right in spite of what all the. And here's the amazing thing is Joseph gets thrown into prison for the exact thing he didn't do. He got thrown in prison for the thing he didn't do. He's probably thinking, I should have just slept with you. I'm in prison anyway. I might as well, If he was thinking worldly and he wasn't thinking like God is with me, that would be the normal assumption, right? Hey, if I'm going to get punished, I might as well enjoy the journey here. That's kind of the experience or what he could have been thinking. So just crazy things happening here that go on and on. So from Joseph's story, we can make decisions based on our perspective of circumstances. We can look around and say, things are, financially, man, I made a business decision years ago, and it still haunts me. We can look at all kinds of things that are going on in our life. Maybe it's our kids. We're like, I try to do my best, and, they're struggling, and I don't know if they're going to be saved and all those things. And we can make decisions, and we can kind of give up in our hearts, or we can make a decision based on the promise of God. Remember that He is with me, and live like that, and treat people like that, and love people like that, and go on. Again, Joseph is the supreme example of how God works and how God really is behind the scenes doing all kinds of. Because here's what's happening here is that Genesis 3:15 says that talking on the after the sin and Adam and Eve sin and God pronounces judgment, He tells Satan that you will bruise his heel and he will bruise your head. It's a messianic prediction that Satan was going to bruise the heel of the Messiah. There would be a flesh wound, but it wouldn't be fatal. It wouldn't be eternally fatal. But that the Messiah would crush his head. And so from Genesis 3:15 all the way through, and all the way through to Jesus, you've got God protecting His seed line. This immorality can't stop God. There's all kinds of things that Satan tries to do to stop God. A barren womb, Abraham and Sarah. The barren womb cannot stop God. God gives Sarah a baby at 90 years old. The whole story goes on through the seed line to show us that God is working in these situations to bring about good, the ultimate good, Jesus on the cross, Jesus coming to die for us. So you see, that's the real story in Genesis, is that little line that follows the babies that are born. When all through history there, we see what God is doing. So Joseph, again, remains faithful. He lives like he really believes God is with him, and he gets punished for doing the exact thing that he didn't do, right? Mm-hmm. And let's read on here in verse 20. While Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. Now here's another problem. I don't want to have favor with the prison warden. I don't want to know a prison warden, right? It's like, you find favor in the eyes of the prison warden. It's like, I really don't want to have that connection, that relationship with the prison warden, because that means I'm in prison, right? So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden